You are precise with heat. Desire lives in you like a well-trained animal, muscled, magnificent, responsive to the whistle of principle. You ask permission with the confidence of someone who is not afraid of no, and then you listen for the whole-body answer, not the half-hearted permission that regret funds. She feels the safety first and the heat a half-breath later. The two braid and become something music wishes it could do with sound. She reaches for a glass and misses it by an inch, because the animal in you looked at the animal in her without threatening to drag it out of the house. She blushes, you pretend not to notice, and the kindness of the pretend is its own ignition. You lead without auditioning for command. Walk with me, you suggest, and the verb carries more hospitality than instruction. On the sidewalk, you set a tempo that lets conversations stroll beside the night. Crossing the street, you adjust your pace without announcing the courtesy. In the doorway, you stand back just enough to be unavoidable and just enough to be optional. This paradox unhooks something in her carefully controlled composure. She is allowed to desire and to decide, allowed to follow and to steer. Her wit sharpens because her guard softens. She says the outrageous things she meant all along, and you throw your head back with laughter that tells her truth is a turn-on. She has never found this arithmetic in any book, only in your presence. In crisis, you become the most dangerous kind of attractive, calm that acts. The child is crying and you're on your knees before anyone else has named distress. The plan falls apart and your hands find tools instead of blame. You are generous with instruction and stingy with hysteria. Watching you is like watching a river obey its banks and still carve new stone. She wants to touch your jaw not because it is handsome, although it is, but because it clenched to hold back a sentence that would have earned applause at the expense of someone else's dignity. She wants to hold your face because faces like yours keep communities from fraying. Her composure dissolves not into helplessness, but into something she trusted as a girl before the world taught her to mistrust it. There is mischief in the scramble. She tries to tease you and trips over the punchline. You catch it midair and hand it back better than you found it. She tries again and lands it this time, and you applaud in a tone that carries no condescension. She bumps your shoulder on purpose while passing you a bowl. You bump back with the exact pressure that says we are playing, not performing. Under the table, her knee finds yours and stays, and you stay, and the quiet communication composes a sonnet with two bones. She glances at your mouth and then pretends she did not. You notice and do nothing that would turn the noticing into cornering. Her pulse argues with her composure and wins. She stirs her drink without looking and spills a polite circle. You place a napkin so gracefully it feels like part of the recipe. Your masculinity is not a mask. It is bone deep, the way a timber knows it is carrying a roof without needing a certificate. This authenticity frees her from the exhausting work of scanning for the plot twist, where performance reveals itself as pain. She stops managing you and discovers how much attention that frees up for wanting you. Wanting makes her bright, not smaller. She speaks of her work with a ferocity she used to sand down for male comfort. You lean forward as if ferocity were a love language and answer in kind with the steadiness that keeps ferocity from burning out. She looks down and realizes her hand is on your forearm again. She leaves it there, this time deliberately. Even the way you rest is subversive. You sit like a man who trusts furniture. You exhale as if breath were a thing the house is allowed to hear. She loosens in sympathy. Her ankles remember the decadence of crossing each other because they want to, not because etiquette diagrams insisted. Her hair escapes the style she forced on it that morning, and you do not tuck it back. You admire the rebellion as if it were a flag. The scramble becomes a Sabbath from the personality she wears when the world needs a specific version of her. With you, versions are permitted to merge. Your standards make the scramble feel righteous rather than risky. You refuse gossip like a craftsman refuses a warped board. You close your tab in time to let tomorrow keep its promise. You keep people's names on your tongue like a sacrament. You leave places better than you found them because ruin is not romantic to you. She can be undone in your presence precisely because your life is not. You could ruin her composure if you wished. You choose to honor it while coaxing it to loosen the top button and breathe. There will be a scene. Kitchen light, a pot insisting on boiling, an argument about nothing worth remembering. And your hand will find the lower knob to dial the heat, while your voice dials the volume down, and your eyes refuse to take offense you were not handed. She will falter mid-complaint and grin at the absurdity of trying to be mad at a man who refuses to treat conflict as theater. She will step into you like someone stepping into shade after performing in the sun. Her forehead will find your chest of its own accord. Your chin will find the crown of her head. Her composure will slide off like a coat from shoulders that have finally decided the weather is safe. Later, with no agenda, she will recount the day to herself and notice how many times you altered her trajectory with nothing more than presence. The moment the cab splashed the curb and you shifted your body between water and her dress. The moment in the store you let a mother with a squirming toddler go first, and then admired the child in a way that made the whole aisle nicer. The moment you answered a stranger's rudeness with a sentence shaped like a boundary rather than a blade. She will realize that her composure scrambled not because she lost control, but because she found a conductor. The music inside her preferred your tempo. And in bed, hours later, when the dark is not heavy but warm, and the house has done its final sigh, she will turn and tell you a story that costs her a little pride. The one where she forgot a word in front of you and felt 12 and 25 and timeless all at once. You will grin and say you liked it. She will ask why. You will say that it proved she trusts you enough to be unprepared. Then the room will soften in that way rooms do when truth lands and stops trying to sell itself. The last thing to leave her face will be the smile of a woman scrambling not to hide, but to arrive. There is a version of her that waits in the wings even on her brightest days, a creature with grass stains on her knees and moonlight on her face, a brave, laughing conspirator who believes in the glory of detours. Most people meet the polished diplomat she's learned to be. With you, the diplomat steps gracefully aside and the conspirator takes the stage. It doesn't happen because you demand it or even ask. It happens because your presence tells the truth with such ease that pretending becomes a chore she can't be bothered to perform. She looks at you and the old rules, how to fold herself into corners, how to make herself palatable to the most anxious person in the room, feel like costumes from a play that closed years ago. She wants air. You are a door that knows how to swing wide. Wildness in your care is not chaos, it is health. You treat her untamed edges the way a good gardener treats a vine with a mind of its own. Give it a trellis, and it becomes an archway for the whole house to walk through. She feels this in your simplest responses. When her idea leaps 3 steps ahead of the conversation, you don't pull it back like a leash on a show dog. You run, and if the ground falls away under both of you, you point out a path the idea can land on without breaking its ankles. When her laughter comes out too loud for etiquette, but exactly right for joy, you don't shush, you harmonize. Permission that large doesn't send her spinning off the planet. It gives her gravity she actually trusts. You turn ordinary moments into mischief that keeps its manners. At the store, she stands on the cart and you push with precisely the speed that feels like a secret but not a spectacle. On the sidewalk, you insist that puddles are invitations, not obstacles, and she discovers she remembers how to stamp a small C without apology. In a museum, you linger before a painting with so much attention that the quiet becomes daring, and she starts narrating the lives of the strangers in the frame until your shoulders shake from holding in laughter. She is not performing for you, she is playing with you. There is a difference so vital the body writes it down and saves it for later. Courage is contagious near you because risk has rhythm. You are not the man who shouts jump from the ground and calls himself brave for watching. You climb the railing first, measure the drop, look for rocks, look again, and then turn with a smile that says, only if you want to. She jumps sometimes because you made the outcome secondary to the integrity of the choice. She also doesn't jump sometimes, and your grin is the same. Her instincts, used to being negotiated with or ignored, are respected into becoming louder. That is the alchemy that turns recklessness into adventure. In conversation, she stops editing the parts of her mind that scare polite company. She admits she wants more. More work that matters, more mornings that start with tenderness instead of triage, more rooms that do not punish brightness. You do not flinch, you add verbs: build, ask, train, try. She describes a dream that used to embarrass her for its size, and you ask how many steps it has, and which step you can carry for an hour while she breathes. The wildest thing you do for her is not applause, it is logistics. She feels the rare intoxication of being seen and supported at once, and the combination makes the ferocious parts of her gentle. Around other men, flirtation has been an audition. With you, it is a dialect of freedom. She teases you and you return it with the accuracy that says you were listening, not waiting for your turn. She throws a daring look at your mouth and you meet it with a softness that refuses to convert heat into harvest. The dance becomes a study in how much can be said without anyone feeling cornered. She discovers how thrilling it is to be both the storm and the sky, and to find a man who understands that weather can be wild without becoming dangerous. You make room for her velocity and for her stillness. On the day she wants to climb a hill before sunrise, you bring a thermos and a blanket and a sentence to set the pace. On the day she wants to refuse every obligation and watch a thunderstorm perform, you sit near a window with your shoulder touching hers and become the quiet that makes lightning look choreographed. Wildness, she learns, is not only running, it's refusing to run from what matters. Your steadiness puts a floor under her leaps and a roof over the nights she needs to burrow into herself and be held. You don't sentimentalize the feral, you honor it. When she is righteous about something that deserves fire, you don't cool her down to make the room easier. You add the kind of wood that burns clean. Facts, plans, allies. When her confidence falters and her childhood ghosts try on the masks of the present, you don't chase the specters with slogans. You hold her name in your mouth the way a priest holds a sacrament, and you say it until the room remembers who is in it. There is nothing more wild than a woman unafraid of her power and uninterested in proving it. You live to see that day, and then you live to protect it. Play becomes a practice with you. Mini golf in the rain because the attendant shrugged and said, "If you don't mind getting wet," and you never minded getting honest. Making a meal out of whatever the pantry forgot to be proud of, turning eggs and onions into something worth a toast. Giving the last word to a song you both pretend to hate because the chorus is objectively ridiculous, then dancing to it with a seriousness that makes ridicule holy. Her body memorizes the sensation of being fully alive in rooms that don't require an audience. Later, when you're away, she can summon the wildness without summoning trouble. That is how you know she trusts you, because she becomes adventurous even when you are not there to supervise the adventure. The talisman of your influence shows up in the smallest rebellions. She leaves the party when she's actually tired instead of when she thinks people will stop wanting her there. She says no without footnotes. She says yes without strategy. She chooses the red dress on Tuesday because the mirror feels like a co-conspirator instead of a judge. She texts you a photograph of a sunrise she went to see alone, and you reply with a simple, perfect sentence: "I'm proud of you." Wildness that has a witness grows roots. Roots make forests. Forests change weather. One night, she asks for a kind of kiss that is inconvenient for the hour, and you say, "Tomorrow by the window, when the light is honest," and you go on holding her like a promise you intend to keep. Her eyes shine with the rarest heat of all, desire that feels safe enough to wait. The next day, you keep the promise, and the kiss becomes exactly what she suspected it could be, an altar where all her contradictions worship at once and go home fed. She will always associate that kind of holiness with you, not because you conjured it, but because you were sober enough to honor it. Wildness, in the end, is simply the absence of fear where love is. With you, love is a house with every window open. There are no rooms she cannot enter, no parts of herself that must be folded into drawers and left for later. Her past is a guest welcomed, not a trespasser. Her future is a map without threats. In that house, she is louder and subtler, braver and softer, funnier and more exact. The paradoxes stop fighting. They link arms and go dancing down the hall. She leaves your side often, this is important, and returns not because she must, but because every time she steps back into your weather, she recognizes it as the climate in which her wildest self was never a problem to solve, only a landscape to explore. There are calms that flatten and calms that deepen. One is a white wall the mind bounces against until it bruises. The other is a lake with fish and wind and shadow and the honest work of rowing. Your calm is the second, and she would rather pursue it at midnight than lie down beside a softness that makes her small. The first time she realizes this, she surprises herself. The party is easy, the couch is warm, the conversation is pleasant, and still she is gathering her coat because you texted, "Walk?" The word is ordinary. The gravity is not. Your quiet has edges, purpose, temperature. It beckons not to sleep, but to wake. The world has trained her to distrust stillness, because too often stillness has meant disengagement, a man withdrawing into a cave of screens and shrugging at the cost. Your stillness is not a retreat, it is a tool. You wield it to lower the room's pulse, to sort signal from noise, to give truth a place to sit where nobody has to shout. She feels this the moment she steps into your pace. The sidewalk was frantic before. Now it has a rhythm. Cars still rush, neon still flickers, but inside the radius of your stride, time cooperates. Her breath, which had been playing high notes all day, drops back to its range. Calm is not your costume, it is your craft. You made it in hours that didn't look like anything special. The small decision to put your phone away when someone speaks so that attention has a chance to grow muscles. The habit of learning names, because names are the handles on doors that open to dignity. The refusal to let anger drive even when anger deserves to ride shotgun. The readiness to apologize without performance and to forgive without amnesia. She senses the repetition under your quiet the way a singer hears a bass line keeping time. That is why your calm never feels like absence. It feels like governance. She chases it because it raises her. In your company, her thoughts stand straighter. She doesn't have to rush to be heard, so she says better things. Decisions that used to wear costumes, witchcraft labeled urgency, boredom labeled patience, get undressed gently until they tell the truth. Should we move? Not yet. Should I quit? Not until the plan has bones. Should I stay? Yes, but let's fix the part that hurts. You never bully clarity into arriving. You set the table with questions it likes to eat and invite it to dinner. Clarity always comes to a table like that. It sits between you and her and pours the wine. Your quiet is not the enemy of heat. It is its ally. When desire enters the room, your calm gives it shape. She is used to men who let lust turn into a sales pitch. You treat it like a recipe, ingredients measured, fire controlled, timing respected, joy kept. This makes her greedy for your patience, the way a runner craves altitude because the lungs want to learn how to carry more. She draws close not to be subdued, but to be steadied enough to explore. The paradox delightfully collapses. The steadier you are, the wilder she can afford to be, and the more she wants the steady again. She is not chasing drama, she is chasing depth. Your calm is a better adventure than most men's volatility. Consider the drive in rain. Other men curse at the sky and become a hazard. You lower your voice, increase your following distance, narrate the next two decisions so the car becomes a small nation where law protects freedom. She watches your hands at 10 and 2 and feels the rare thrill of safety accelerating. By the time the storm loosens its grip, she is laughing at nothing because the body must discharge grateful adrenaline somehow. She will remember that laugh later and associate it not with escape, but with mastery that never bragged. In the kitchen, a small disaster unfolds. Sauce burning, timer lying, smoke detector auditioning for an opera. Your calm remains domestic, not heroic. Off the heat, open the window, laugh first to keep the room from choosing panic as its leader. With a folded towel, you turn failure into the kind of story people tell when they love each other. She was prepared to apologize for ruining everything. You were prepared to salvage what mattered and let the rest be evidence that evenings can be beautiful even when they wander off the recipe. Her shoulders drop 3 centimeters and never quite return to their old position. That is how permanent ease is made. Waiting rooms are the true test. Under bad lighting, inside minutes that pretend to be hours, you become a harbor. You don't entertain dread with elaborate speculations. You sit with it, let it talk, and decline to let it narrate the future. You make a joke that doesn't cheapen anything and lands like a hand on a back. You drink the terrible coffee without ennobling it with a complaint. You ask the receptionist a real question about their day. She watches you choose dignity one small gesture at a time and realizes the calm she is chasing has a spine made of 1,000 tiny vertebrae. None of them glamorous, all of them strong. Your home is a sermon delivered without words. Chairs aimed at conversation, not at domination by screen. Books with dog-eared pages, because wisdom only changes people when it's allowed to be handled. A table with a burn mark that has a story you're not embarrassed to tell. A sink that is usually empty because you honor the person tomorrow by cleaning up tonight. You don't call any of this minimalism or style. You call it doing right by the people you love, including yourself. She steps into the room and feels her nervous system decide to take off its shoes. The calm you keep is not precious. It is hospitable. She would rather chase you than rest, because rest without meaning makes her restless. Your calm always has meaning. It has a plan resting inside it like a heartbeat. When she looks into your quiet, she can see the outlines of tomorrow, the small commitments that build trust, the larger ones that build a life. The open windows where light will come in, even on the days nobody feels like opening curtains. You are never selling her the good times. You are selling her a weather system in which the bad times do not get to make the rules. Conflict meets your calm and finds its teacher. You do not let the sharpest sentence win. You let the truest one. You can stop mid-protest, tilt your head and say, "You're right," which is a phrase that turns war back into conversation. If you are wrong, you are quicker at repair than at rhetoric. If she is wrong, your correction is structured to preserve tomorrow's tenderness. She learns that closeness with you does not require preemptive bracing. It requires honesty, and honesty is cheaper near you than anywhere else. You do not hoard serenity like a luxury good. You spend it where it multiplies. You give it to the barista by being ready with your order and with eye contact that makes service feel like collaboration. You give it to the child who stares at you in a grocery aisle by waving solemnly like a knight acknowledging a small prince. You give it to the man trying to look important by letting him, because importance has a short half-life and does not need your help to decay. She sees the civic dimension of your calm and understands, viscerally, why she is drawn to it. It is not just good for her. It is good for the world. On nights when her mind won't land, you do not try to puzzle it into silence. You sit with her in the living room glow and let thoughts unspool without a schedule. You rub the arch of her foot, because the arch is where the day hides its insistence. You ask, "Do you want witness or help?" and then honor the answer like a contract. Slowly, the river within her stops trying to leap its banks. She lies down not because she is defeated, but because she is accompanied. The sleep that follows is not an escape, it is provision. She pursues your calm across days because it teaches her a new devotion. Move toward what enlarges you. She finds herself choosing differently even when you are elsewhere. Closing the laptop before it colonizes another hour, calling her sister first instead of last, taking the longer route that passes the lake because water tells the truth without rehearsing it. She is chasing you, and she is chasing herself, which is the highest compliment a love can receive. And there is the peculiar glory of morning. The sun hasn't yet decided whether it is serious, the street is rehearsing, and you hand her a cup with that little flourish you give to small kindnesses. She sits on the step beside you and realizes, without fanfare, that this is the life she used to think belonged to other people. A day beginning inside a quiet that moves, that will go with her into the loud places and continue to make sense. She would rather chase that than rest anywhere else. Not because you are a finish line, but because you are a direction. She stands, stretches, and says, "Let's go." Your calm stands too, and the world, untidy, beautiful, possible, starts. It is not that you turn her into art. It is that standing near you removes the dust from what was always luminous. You don't curate her. You curate the room. You put chairs where conversation can happen and light where truth looks good on skin. You stand at the distance that makes features into a face and a day into a story. A masterpiece has never needed an audience to be real, but even masterpieces benefit from a museum that knows how to honor what it holds. You become that museum. Quiet, intentional, reverent without fuss. She steps into your orbit and discovers that beauty does not have to beg for interpretation. It can simply be seen. Your attention is a frame with good wood and clean lines. Nothing ornate, nothing that competes with the canvas. The simplest kind. The kind a painter hopes for. Inside that frame, she finds her laugh suddenly bolder because your smile does not rush it along. She finds her ideas more articulate because your questions believe in their architecture. She finds her body less at war with itself because your gaze counts no parts. It receives a whole. The symmetry of such seeing loosens something expensive in her. Tension she has spent too many years paying. To be held like this, even by the eyes alone, restores value not by appraisal, but by recognition. You are the first to notice the brushstrokes no one else mentions. The grit beneath her elegance, the muscle under her kindness, the way she does order not as performance, but as generosity. You say things like, "The way you pace a room teaches it patience." And she hears a truth that had never been named, but had always colored her days. Compliments like that are not confetti. They are conservation. They slow the rate at which weather erodes meaning. They teach the soul to believe its own signature again. In your kitchen, the light is conspiratorial. Steam writes a little opera above the pot, and you stand behind her. Not to claim, not to direct, but to witness. You ask about the herb she is crushing, and she tells you how her grandmother taught her to bruise basil with a palm and a whisper. And you say, "I can taste the story." And she realizes that her whole body has become a recipe. Measurements inherited, spice remembered, improvisation forgiven. You plate the food like a quiet praise, and she takes a first bite with the pleasure of a woman who is not performing appetite for anyone. The masterpiece is not only in the eating, it is in the permission that the plate communicates. This is yours, and you are allowed to love it. You make small rituals out of dignity. When you walk together through a gallery, you don't supply the plaque with your own voice. You turn and listen to hers, which arrives less like opinion and more like friendship with light. She points to a corner most people ignore, and you kneel to see the artist's hand correcting itself under the final layer. You say, "I love that the correction remains," and she realizes you are teaching her something radical. That flaw is not a stain, but a history. She thinks of her own revisions, the relationships she repaired before they ended, the decisions she changed before they calcified, and finds herself worthy in the exact places she used to doubt. When she dresses for you, it is not a submission to theater. It is collaboration with the season. She chooses linen because the day asks for breath, silk because the night wants a little gravity. She checks the mirror and sees not critique but composition. The way the fabric falls at her wrist says movement will be easy. The way the color gives her eyes back to her says attention will be clear. You meet her with the regard a painter gives a finished canvas. Not possessive, not indifferent, grateful for the privilege of being near. Gratitude is the most flattering gaze a man can wear. It leaves no residue but warmth. Your words are conservation tools. When a thought of hers arrives with uncertain edges, you do not cut it to make it fit a frame you already own. You build a frame to fit the thought. When memory brings a canvas with smoke damage, you do not rewrite the past into pretty. You set it under the kind of light that shows age without shame. When shame tries to paint over her bold colors in thin, prim coats, you bring solvent disguised as laughter and patience, disguised as questions. Bit by bit, the original palette returns. She is startled by the saturation of herself. The masterpiece was always this bright. She had been standing in dim rooms. You keep your hands in your pockets at the right moments. A lesser man would rush to touch in order to prove he was present. You withhold not because you are stingy, but because you understand sequence. Sight first, then speech, then the smallest brush of knuckles against the back of a hand. Then, when yes is a word both bodies have already said in 10 other ways, the kind of touch that does not announce itself. Art is ruined by fingers that can't wait. She feels it as an honor so powerful it becomes a current. The heat in her doesn't shy, it blooms. Desire, seen without being seized, turns opulent. Even your silences are curatorial. You leave space in conversation the way a good museum leaves space around its best pieces, so a viewer can step back and let the eyes adjust. In that pause, she hears the shape of her thought complete itself. She says something in a lower, truer key, and the air approves. A masterpiece needs room to breathe. You make that room wherever you stand. On sidewalks, at tables, in bed, space arrives with you like a second, kinder atmosphere. In conflict, you refuse to cheapen the art with sloppy handling. You do not point a finger and call it commentary. You step closer to see the brushwork of the moment, what fear layered first, what pride glazed over, what love once restored. You ask for her meaning and she gives it. Yours arrives without varnish. The argument quiets not because anyone lost, but because both of you remembered the value of what you were touching. She leaves the conversation with more color than she brought into it, which is how she knows the frame is safe. After you part for the night, the city keeps reflecting her back at herself. In the window, she sees posture without apology. In the crosswalk, she sees stride without hurry. On the bus, she sees a face that belongs to itself. Your orbit did not make any of that.